All right. Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today for the very last but not the least session for Startup Slam 2020 for the product and design theme. This session is called Beyond the Code, GitHub for Product Management, and it is presented to you by Anne Thomas. My name is Amy, and I will be your session moderator for today. I guess the day is ending, but if you have any questions throughout the session, just add them to the chat, and Anne and I will try to address them as they come up, or we'll come back at the very end to get them answered. This theme is sponsored by Gearbox, so a huge thank you to them for their support. And they actually built our new Startup Slam website and helped us refresh the brand. Before we begin, a little bit about Anne, though. Anne has spent the past 12 years immersed in the wonderful world of web development as a front-end developer and can be found offering comprehensive Shopify store audits with the talented team at Shop Critique. Before that, she was the technical director at Out of the Sandbox, which is a premium Shopify theme partner, which is also where she successfully used GitHub to wrangle product management and ongoing development. So now we know a little bit about Anne. We can jump straight into it, and you can start the presentation. Also, if you double click on the window that she's about to share, it'll maximize the screen so you can not miss any details.
Fabulous.
Take it away.
Oh, thank you so much for that intro. That was great. I'm so excited. This is the first ever virtual talk I've ever done. I've done lots of talks in person, but never virtually, so this is going to be good. Just to give you kind of like an overview of what's going to happen, I do have slides, but this talk, it's also going to be quote unquote interactive, if you will. There's a lot of it's hard to kind of just talk about GitHub, so I'm actually going to be going into GitHub, showing you different project boards. You can kind of think of it sort of like a D&D-esque, like Twitch stream kind of situation. So yeah. The main takeaway is if I teach you just a little bit about using GitHub for product management, or a bit more about GitHub, product management and GitHub, those are the two things that we'll just be talking about today. So let me share my slides. All right. So I'm going to do actually my entire screen. Let's see here, and then switch back and forth.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that, because I was just, you know how there's always that feeling of like, oh, can everyone see it? Yes. All right. So a little bit of intro. We already went over that. I can totally just fix that, or skip right over that. So that's fantastic. If you do want to check out our site, shopcritique.com, we'd really appreciate that. I don't know if anyone is actually running a Shopify store. If you are, please drop me a note. I would absolutely love to talk to you. Cool. All right, let's get into this. So product management. What is product management really? It seems everyone actually has different definitions depending on what company you're working at, and sort of where you are, especially with startups. Product management, one thing that I always sort of come back to is that product management does not equal project management, because a lot of people tend to get the two confused. But we're not talking about sort of sprints or scrums or anything like that. We're actually talking about sort of the why as opposed to the how. So, why are certain features getting prioritized? How are you making those decisions? How are you getting the feedback that's informing those decisions that you make on your product? All that kind of stuff. So product management doesn't quite equal project management. Again, you might see job postings where there are overlaps between the two. But in this case, we're going to talk more about product management, but there are sort of, in the same way that you can say you're a web developer, and then there's front-end developer and back-end developer, and sometimes in the Venn diagram, things cross over. It can also happen with product management and project management, but product management is a whole field that, has its own ins and outs. So my own personal definition of product management is that it's something that's going to be making sure everyone on the team is informed about the direction of the product and also feels a sense of ownership. So especially for startups, it's so important when you do have this like small scrappy team everyone needs to be thinking about like, okay, what's this end product that we're building? Like, what are we actually, building here? As a developer, as a designer, it's really dangerous in a startup environment because there's so few of you usually to take this idea of like, okay, I'm just going to take a view of what I'm doing. That's it. I'm not going to think about anything else. You really want to be able to think about the product holistically and, what is the vision? What is the larger strategy? So in that case here, as well, the other thing with product management is communication. So a lot of times, not everyone on the team might know why something is being built, but I think that's a real error that can happen. So knowing why you're actually building a feature is really important. Bugs, sure, you know why you're fixing a bug, but do you know why, you're choosing to implement a slider or, a light box or something like that in the site or the product versus something else? Like, why has that been prioritized? So oftentimes there's this term that's sometimes bandied about with product management, which is stakeholders. Stakeholders basically means someone who has a stake in the success of the project or the product. So in that case, if you think about a startup, if you only have 3 to 15 people or what have you, or maybe more or less, everyone at that point is really a stakeholder. So it's great to get everyone involved. So in our case, when we were working out of the sandbox, we were already all using GitHub for our actual development. And so that became an important piece of the development process and then eventually led into being an important piece of our actual creating our product as well. So, all right, that's fine. Do you need an official product manager? Like there's often this title, this role. And at our case at Out of the Sandbox, we didn't actually have an official product manager. But we did have is a group of people that were very invested in the product and making those decisions. So even if you don't have an official product manager, you may want to consider unofficially giving someone that title. So in the case of product management in general, you're definitely already managing your product. If you're putting things out there, if you are, shipping code, if you have users, you have a product and you're managing it somehow or some form. But a lot of companies, especially startups, may not have this official idea of like, okay, like how are we being intentional about it? And that's the key, is figuring out how you can be intentional about your product management. So with that role that I was talking about where, you might not have an official product manager, sometimes you'll find that it might be your CEO, it might be a designer on your team, project manager again, lead developer. There's usually going to be someone who cares about that strategic vision of the product but is able to take the input of whether that's external feedback, whether that's other people on the team, take it and really determine, okay, how do we take all this feedback that's coming from all different sides and prioritize what we're actually going to be building? So the reason that product management is a good thing to think about beyond just, okay, we're putting things out there, is that intentionality. So if you go back, if you have put out a feature and you're just like, okay, yep, that's what we're going to build, great, that's great, and you don't think about how that will impact your users, or you don't have any data to back it up. If you go back in 6 months and say, okay, why did we make that decision? What drove that? How can we determine if that was a success or a failure? If you don't have any sort of paper trail of why those decisions were made, it's really difficult to go back and say, okay, this is why something is successful versus not successful. And we ran into that with Out of the Sandbox, because before we were doing intentional product management, we really kind of didn't know why things would work or not work. So it's incredibly, incredibly helpful to have some way to track the effect of those decisions. And not only that, but for developers who are actually, building the product, to be able to go back and look and see why something was already submitted. Did it come on support? Did that come from the lead designer that wanted this feature built? That way they know, okay, here's the reason why I'm building something. And that is super, super important. And you're not just, pushing code around. So why GitHub? Why GitHub? I mean, honestly, GitHub, the reason we went with GitHub is because we were already using GitHub. So if you're already using GitHub for your repos, you're well into it, that's where your code is being committed, why not use GitHub? I personally found as a developer especially that having everything in one spot, not having to open up another app, not having to have multiple different things and different places to look and connect all the dots, GitHub makes it easy to really go back and find history of why past decisions were made. So if you're already using it to store your code, it's fantastic. Finding out the why is a lot easier. So again, that context for developers. Now, that being said, with why GitHub, there are tons of alternatives out there. Just like product management can be different from every company that you go to, there's lots of ways to achieve that management of your product. So there's Trello is quite popular. GitLab also has, I think Trello built in, where you have the different sort of Kanban boards, product board, roadmap, ZenHub. Product Stash is one that I discovered more recently. They're worth checking out if you don't really care about the connection between GitHub and something else. I'd recommend checking out Product Stash. But these solutions can run, except for Product Stash, because it is free to start off with. A lot of these, Trello is also free, but some of these are for one user for a month. It can be $20 to $80 for one user. And when you're in sort of startup mode, at least if you're bootstrapping, you want to be very concerned about, okay, how much is this going to eat into the monthly budget? Is it scalable? How is this going to help or hurt the bottom line? And the great thing about GitHub is that if you're already using GitHub and you need some sort of solution for product management, why not GitHub? Because if you determine that it doesn't work for you and you want to try something else, there's no sunk cost. It's free. It's already in there. So it's worth a shot. And it worked out quite well for us. So some caveats about GitHub. We might as well get them out there. GitHub is not necessarily for everyone. Some non-technical people can get overwhelmed by GitHub. There is a lot of tabs and buttons and places to go and search. But I have found that all of our support team at Out of the Sandbox, they were all on GitHub and were able to go in and submit issues and we're fine. It's just a matter of making sure that everyone on your team has a proper intro and feels comfortable searching for things. So it's really a matter of onboarding properly and not just saying like, okay, here's what we're using now. Another thing that is kind of a downside with GitHub, depending on the type of product management you're going to be doing. Now, this is again going into the territory of project management, but having specific detailed timelines isn't the easiest in GitHub. They do have something called milestones, which you can use to set a date for something, but they don't have the idea of Gantt charts and that kind of thing. So depending on the needs of how detail oriented you want to be with your planning for your product, timelines can be tricky. I often find though, if you're doing product management in an agency type setting versus a product company, timelines tend to be a lot more strict at an agency type environment because you have clients that are relying on you. You really have to get that out the door. Whereas if you're an internal product team, sometimes you have a little bit more leeway, so it may not be as necessary. As well, the last caveat here is that in order to vote and comment on an issue, you need to be added to the repo itself. So what I mean by that is you may have seen sort of public roadmaps before, or where you can sort of take a look at issues and that kind of thing. I'm actually going to show you an example right now, which is a really great one. There's this, if you haven't heard of this app before, it's called Markup. And Markup, what it does is it allows you to add exactly that, markup to any websites or anything like that. And they have this great public roadmap. So this is built in Trello, which is totally free. And so you can see here, you can do sort of little upvotes and comments and that kind of thing. You'll see that we're going to recreate something very similar in GitHub, but it's for internal use only. So this idea of a public roadmap, you could definitely sort of recreate it in Trello and have one in GitHub as well. I would say it's actually a good thing to have two different ones because you can get a lot more detailed, maybe put internal things that you want on the GitHub roadmap and then have a beautiful public-facing roadmap that people can interact with in Trello. Yeah, so that is the caveat. So we'll keep on moving. Yeah, so that's going to be, that was my intro, basically. Sorry, I've got two screens going here on product management sort of as a whole. And I wanted to just stop here before we get into actually going into GitHub and just see if anyone had any questions about product management in general, like things you want clarified. I'm not an expert on product management. I've done a lot of research, but you know, I'm not an expert. So okay.
Margaret is requesting to share her video, so I'm just gonna accept that, and I think she has a question for you.
Oh.
I don't. I actually just wanted to come in and see your talk, Anne.
So Margaret is actually who you should talk to if you want more of an in-depth view on product management, because Margaret is a product manager at Pixel Union and is incredible. And yes, so.
I won't steal your thunder. I'll let you keep doing your talk.
Samantha did ask, I see the question here, can you keep your repos private if you're using GitHub for free? Yes. Originally, GitHub did not have that feature where you had to pay for private repos. They've now changed that. You can now have as many free private repos as you want. All right. Okay, so you're intrigued. How does this work? So now we get into meeting the fictional startup. So what I've actually done is created a little GitHub repo here. So if you have a GitHub account, let me just pop back over here. So I know you're screen sharing, so it's like double. But what's the difference between product manager and product owner? Ooh, that's a great question. That is also one of those ones where it really depends on the company and the size. Oftentimes people use them interchangeably, but product manager and product owner, I would argue there's not that much of a difference. I could probably make up something and say like, okay, well, you know, product manager or product owner is more about like the strategic vision, and then the product manager is about like compiling all of the information and putting it on the roadmap and that kind of thing. But honestly, they can be pretty interchangeable. If you look at the job postings, you'll see that they're very similar. Cool. So what I actually love to do is I'm going to pop over to GitHub. And so I've got in here my organizations. So what I've done is I've created a fake app company. So this is our app company. So this is what we're going to play around with. And what I actually love to do, I don't actually know how many people we've got. We've only got 11 people. How many people here have actual GitHub accounts? Because what I'd love to do is actually add everyone to the GitHub account and we can just play around with it. So if you want to post your GitHub account username in the chat, I can add it in there. All right. Yes, look at the wall. Actually, what I'm going to do, since Amy is our moderator, Amy, if you don't mind, I'm going to add you first. I should really have, oh, people. There we go. So I'm actually going to make, I'm going to make Amy an owner. That's right. And then Amy, with this power comes great responsibility. Do you mind just adding everyone that's in the chat to the repo?
Yeah, of course, I'll do that.
Amazing, thank you. Okay, so here is our role-playing game as we're doing Dungeons and Dragons, but product management style. So we have this repo, and this is our fake app company. So we have 3 different repositories in here where we're storing our code. So we've got our shoppable Instagram. So this is our imaginary app for displaying Instagram feeds on Shopify stores. We have, so also funny story, this is Giraffe Apps. This was an actual startup that I worked at way back in the day. Well, one of the things that they put out there. It's like a social media thing. So I asked if I could use the logo, and they said yes. Doesn't exist anymore. And like all cool startups of back in the day, it's giraffe neck, but we've taken out all the vowels because that's the way things were done back then. So that's giraffe neck. So we've got an app that's a shoppable Instagram. We have our site that we use to advertise and support our giraffe neck apps. And then we also have a spelling and grammar app. So these are sort of the 3 ongoing projects that we have to take care of. So this is our startup. We've got 2 apps. We've got our website that we need to take care of, which is more, a brochure site. So this is where we're going to, manage all of these varying different things, basically. So if I refresh here, we've got 3 people now. Exciting. So here we go. Let me just pop back to the slides for a second. Okay. So quick intro to the GitHub interface, first off. So this screen that we're on right now, you can see it just says giraffe neck in our URL. So this is our organization. Okay, so you can create an organization. You can create as many organizations as you'd like on GitHub, and you can have for multiple companies that you're running or what have you. You can see if I go back to your organizations, I've got HackerU, which is I teach web development part-time. So HackerU is now Juno, part of them. Another small app, Giraffe Neck, and then Shop Critique, which is my company. So these are all the various different organizations. So if I pop back to Giraffe Neck, again, it's just going to show me these are the different areas of concern for giraffe apps. So then we have people. So these are all, yes, hello, welcome team. We're gonna do great things here. And so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna take a look. Let me pop back to the slides. So I'm actually curious in the chat again, how many people have used it seems like a lot of people have GitHub already. So have people used GitHub for development purposes before? Fingers crossed. Totally, yes, Tom, awesome, great, okay. Yeah, awesome, everyone's on board. Yes, that's why you're here. All right, cool. We got 1 note, that's okay. All right, so we got our various repos. So pop back here. So that's sort of the intro to GitHub. And if we click into any of these, you'll see, okay, here's where we'd store all of our code. Honestly, I just created these, so there's not really much code in here. If you ever want to go back to the main organization page, again, it's like breadcrumbs. You can click through like that. Okay, overview of 3 repos, did that. All right, so let's talk a little bit about internal versus external feedback. So at the moment, we have our various apps, and the one that we're going to be focusing on for today, I just wanted to show that we have 3 different ones, but we're going to be focusing on our shoppable Instagram. So we're going to click inside there. And if you're not familiar with shoppable Instagram, just to show you what that is, it's a Shopify app. There are tons of them. You can see here, there's 110 results. But it's an app that when you click on an image, there are sort of little hotspots potentially. Some of them do have hotspots, some of them don't. So it pulls in an Instagram feed and allows you to link your Instagram photos to products on your website. Okay, so that's the app that we had supposedly built and that we're now supporting. And we're building out as our product, and we want to make it better, and that's what we're working towards. Okay, so the main areas that we're going to focus on for this are we have our code, and then we have issues and projects. These are going to be the 2 areas that we're going to hang around in the most. So if you click on issues, you'll see I've added 1 issue here. It's just kind of hanging out by itself. And if you click inside the issue, if you've used GitHub before, this is potentially very familiar to you. Okay, so we have the description of our issue. It's a bug. Okay, all fine and dandy. Great. And then we have our projects. So there's an ongoing project. Okay, how does this relate to actual product management? This feels like project management. Well, let's pop back here for a sec. And think about this idea of internal versus external feedback. So internal issues are going to be ones that people on our team create. So that means, people on support, a designer, a CEO, whoever can create any type of GitHub issue. And what you can expect from the people on your team that are creating those issues is, or at least hope to expect, is detailed information. What I mean by that is we're going to be setting up something called issue templates, which gives more of a framework for people when they're filling out and submitting GitHub issues, how to actually say like, okay, this is the information that we're looking for to move forward. Then we have external issues. So external issues are submitted by customers and users. They're not always the clearest, and beware the squeaky wheel. What I mean by that is you might have someone who is incredibly angry about this one specific thing that your app doesn't do. Should you listen to them or should you focus on something else? With product management, it's always a balancing act in terms of trying to figure out, okay, do we focus on technical debt? Do we focus on this thing that's going to give us revenue? What are we focusing on? Do we focus on this one bug fix or all of these sort of priorities going on? So that's we want to do with product management is capture both that internal. So it's like a giant suggestion box. You want everybody on the team to be able to think about ideas and just throw them somewhere. You want to be able to capture all of that great brain juice that's going to be captured. And then you have the external feedback, which is people that are using your actual product and have opinions on the direction that it should go. Okay, so we have our 3 different projects that we're working with here, our 3 different repos. So let's set up an internal roadmap so that we can see what's going on with all of them. So we're going to go back to Giraffe Neck, our main organization area. I'm just going to quickly check to make sure there's no questions or anything weird. Nope. Okay, all good here. Okay, so cool thing about GitHub is that it actually allows you to have this idea of a global project. So you may have experimented or seen these projects in individual repos before, but having an organization project can be super, super powerful because you can actually link multiple repos together and be able to track what's going on in all those various repos in one single spot. So here we have, I've got 2 projects that are open at the moment. I've got a status overview and then our roadmap 2021. So remember, this roadmap 2021 is internal only. This is not something that can be shared with the public. This is just for our eyes only and our team eyes only. But it's incredibly helpful for our team because we can actually go in, anyone can go in that's been added to the team and see what's going on for the roadmap. Okay, so we've got a roadmap. About this roadmap, again, you can see that it mimics quite similarly what is happening with this sort of markup public roadmap. So we pop over here. At the moment, it's not very populated, but don't worry, we'll fix that. We've got Q1, Q2, Q3, and then over here, Q4. Q1, it's just 3 months, so they're all divided up in 3 months. So you don't have to do your product management this way. If you prefer to break it down, per month, have specific dates in mind, what have you. This is fairly common just to do it by quarters. So this is where you'll actually determine what you're going to hit. Like what are your main, how are you going to build out your product for these specific 3 months? How are you going to prioritize things? So in here, we can add cards. So at the moment, we only have 2 cards that are just 2 bugs. So we're actually not going to add any of those specific bugs. Neither of these bugs are, maybe they're not big enough or whatever to be added to the roadmap. There's also some discussion on whether you would actually even add bugs to like a larger roadmap. In our case today, we're just going to keep it mainly to features. So bugs generally aren't added, but something like technical debt, maybe that's a larger, bigger, meatier piece could potentially be added. So this is our roadmap 2021. So to create a new project in your global organization, you can click New Product. You can create, There's different project templates, all that fun stuff. I already created them, so we're not gonna do anything there. And I'm gonna come back to the status overview one. Okay, so that's our internal roadmap. So that's, again, where people can come in and see whatever they want to see. Then we have issue templates. So I mentioned this before, which is where we want to make it easy for people to submit feedback. So if I pop over here to our shoppable Instagram repo again, I'm going to go into settings. And then down here, I'm going to go into where I see issues. And I'm going to go click on set up templates. So what GitHub does, you can create your own custom templates, but they actually give you some pre-populated ones. And actually, before I create one, I just want to show you what this is going to do. It's going to add choices to this screen here. This is where we add a new issue to our repository. So if you click new issue, you'll see that it just automatically comes up with a new issue, and we can add in information as we wish. However, if we pop over here and set up our templates, I'm going to do a feature request and preview it, edit. So what it does is it pre-populates this with information. And this is the main thing with anytime you're creating anything where you want to help your team, basically. Make it easy for people to do their job. Don't make them think too hard about it. Give them, an idea of, okay, what do I have to remember? What do I need to fill out? This makes it very, very, very clear. So we're going to say, yep, that looks good. Proposed changes, super. We're going to commit this. We'll just commit it directly to the main branch. That's totally fine. Cool. All right, so now we have issue templates here. So I've added a new issue template for feature requests. So now when I go back to issues and I click on new issue, you'll see that I now have this option for feature request. So I could say get started. And now what it's going to do, it's pre-populated with content that anyone on the team can just fill out. So in my case, what I'm going to do, I had some example features that I'm going to add. Okay, so for our shoppable Instagram, I'm going to request alternative layouts. Maybe currently we only have, a grid layout. We want to also have, more of a masonry kind of layout. Okay, is your feature request related to a problem? Please describe. Yes. So then we'll say, need more. Okay, this is not going to be very descriptive, but need more options. Masonry layout. Alternatives might be custom CSS, additional context, maybe like we'll put, imagine if we had a screenshot of masonry layout, for example. Okay, so what we're also going to do, and actually there is a way to do this in the creating the issue template. I kind of forgot about it, but we'll do it manually here, which is labels. Labels are incredibly helpful when you are working with GitHub, just in general, but especially for product management. So with labels, I've already created, well, it existed as enhancement, but I renamed it as feature. So feature. And then what we can also do is we can say, oh, do we want to add it to a project? Actually, we don't, not yet. We're just submitting this issue. Okay, cool. So we now have a issue that we've submitted, says, okay, alternative layouts, that looks good. Now what I would love for everyone to do is we're actually, I think we're at that point, issue templates, labels. Actually, we're going to skip ahead, which is to the, no, okay, we'll do it in order. Okay, so we add an issue template. And now we will use labels for organization. Okay, so we did that. And how do we add new labels though? So we added the feature that was already there. If we go over to issues and go to labels, here we have, these are the default labels that GitHub just provides to you. I would highly recommend it. You can add emojis to these. You can have a lot of fun with them. You can, change different colors, however you want to organize them. The default ones out of the box are just fine. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a couple of new labels. So these are going to be specifically for this product management. So it's not necessarily the actual, project management of getting the code out the door, but more of that larger roadmap idea. So I'm going to add one that says revenue. And I could add a description as well, but in the interest of time, I'm going to add one that is technical debt. I'm going to add another one that is MVP, which is minimum viable product. So this would be a great label, if you're just creating a brand new product. So maybe you don't have any external feedback at the moment and you're just trying to organize, okay, what major features need to get into this product to get out the door so that we feel good about that. So that would be MVP. And then you could also have nice to have, which is, hey, this would be a great feature. This would be super, but it's not really necessary. And then lastly, support. So that's probably coming from if you do have a support person, or maybe you're manning the support yourself. That's where that one would come from. So let's pop back over here to our issues. And what we've also decided is, okay, maybe with alternative layouts, we have determined that if we add alternative layouts, this would also be revenue generating. And so one of the things that you want to do with these GitHub issues is add lots of comments. So for instance, I don't know, maybe we, based on previous features that add more options to display, we've determined, that this would increase revenue by X%, for example. And then what you could do is if you had a previous issue that you've already been tracking in here that proved that, or, okay, we added this ability to add CSS, for example, you could reference that issue with a hashtag. Again, I don't have many in here. Let's say pinning multiple items and reference that issue. That's another key thing about GitHub is just linking all the things together so that it becomes easy to track and find that stuff. So I'm going to comment on that. And based on that information that's been added to this issue, I'm now also going to add the label of revenue. Cool. Okay, so I've got two labels on that. So that is using labels. Next, we have, just keeping an eye on the time, we have gathering external feedback. This is the super fun one. Okay, so you may be thinking, okay, I've got people emailing about the product. That's great. I can capture that. I can manually add that in to GitHub. That's fine. But what if you want to be able to easily add in, someone can submit a form and then it automatically creates a GitHub issue. So because we're a startup and we're bootstrapping things, we want to do this on the cheap. So what we're going to do is there are ways to do this programmatically, meaning you don't have to use any sort of like quote unquote no code tools or what have you. But for the purposes of this, I thought it'd be easier to just show sort of a no code version, which is using Zapier. So if I pop into Zapier, what I've done is I've created a Zap that and then this already exists in Zapier, like they have it sort of as an existing option already. So create GitHub issues from new Google form responses, okay? So a Google form was created, so shoppable Instagram feedback, submit app feedback, and then so this is, I've got a type, so is it a feature, is it a bug? They have to put in a title, they have to put in a description, that's it, that is it. If you wanted to make it even easier for people, you could remove the title and just, populate it with something else. The main thing with getting feedback from people is just making it as easy as possible. So then I'm actually going to post this in here. Post in there. And if you all wouldn't mind, pop over to that form and add an issue. So we're going to be collecting some feedback. Please, no dirty words. So I will do that as well. So feature, here's another example feature. I want to add more links to the product image. Add more links. And then my description is going to be currently, you can only add one link to the image. I'd like to be able to add more. Okay, so I'm going to submit that. Response has been recorded. So when a Google form submits, what happens is it is captured. All right, yes. People adding features, fantastic. Yes, so good. So what happens is they get added to this spreadsheet, super. And then what happens in Zapier is you can see here that find data. So it gets synced up. You have to say, all right, these are the issue submissions. Issue submissions sheet, yep, that's connected. Yep, great, great, great. It's gonna find the data. So it shows, here's some example data that it gets in there. And then for creating the issue in GitHub, we can choose the app event, etc. And then you can customize the issue. So what we do is we populate the title column into the title, description into the body. And then the cool thing about this too is that you can actually add additional sort of text around those dynamic fields in addition. You can add an assignee by default, and then you can also add the label. In our case, what we're doing is we're going to pull in that label from our form field from here, so we can choose. So it'll determine whether it is a feature or a bug. So it'll pull that in, and then in theory, when we pop over here to our Shuffle Instagram, hooray! We have issues that have been submitted. Now, remember I was talking about like caveats and that kind of thing? You will notice that by default, they are actually all submitted by myself, which is not ideal. However, what you can actually do, which is, it makes it pretty easy, and there are, if you do it programmatically, there are ways that you can sort of submit it anonymously and what have you. Unfortunately, that's not really the case with the Zap. But what you can do is you can search for Shuffle Instagram external feedback, select all of these, and then we can label this as these all as external feedback. Oops, taking its time. There we go. Cool. So now we can see that, all right, these are all the external feedback that we have gotten. Cool. All right. So that makes it quite handy. So then we get to the fun part, and this is also interactive. So I'm glad you're all on this GitHub team organization. And this is emoji voting. So this is where you can actually, now you can get all of the feedback as well from people on your team. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go into, okay, feature dark mode. So if we click into feature dark mode, yeah, dark mode options, awesome. So what we want to do is we want to capture what everyone on the team thinks about this feature idea. So this is where we want to collect our internal feedback. So yes, someone already did it. See the heart? So right here, so you can click either down here or up here, doesn't really matter. So I'm going to say, yes, this is a thumbs up. Or maybe if I don't think, actually, you know what, maybe I'll remove the thumbs up, you know, the eyes. Internally, generally, you can make up, I mean, these have sort of their own meanings, but internally you can determine, like, what does eyes mean? Does that mean that it needs, you know, more information? You need more documentation, you need more support. Does a hooray mean, yes, we don't even need to put it through more discussion? We should definitely build that. Do you need a certain amount of, you know, thumbs up in order to, you know, say like, yes, everyone agrees, what have you. So these, they can be your own little determination of internally how you're going to vote on issues. But the main thing is to get people voting on issues so that you get that feedback. So let's say if I don't, I mean, there's some ones that are definitely, okay, like, oh no, I don't think this is a good idea. So I'm gonna say no. Yeah, it's a really handy little feature. So well worth using. Okay, so now we get to that's sort of collecting our feedback. Now, how do we actually prioritize and organize that within GitHub and actually say like, okay, great, we've gotten, because what's gonna end up happening and what definitely happened out of the sandbox is you are gonna end up with a lot of issues. A lot of issues. Sometimes I would get a little sad and be like, oh wow, we have a lot of issues in our backlog. And then it always made me feel better to go to VS Code, for example, on their GitHub repo, which I'll pull up right now. Let's see here, yeah, just search for it. See how many they have in their backlog. Well, they automatically close them too, but they've got 5K plus, like yeah. And so there's always something happening here. That's actually something that I recommend as well. Take a look at like roadmap, or sorry, take a look at public GitHub repositories. You're gonna find a lot of really cool stuff that people are doing in there. For example, they're using projects as well, not specifically for product management, but it's kind of just neat to poke around and see what other people are doing. Yeah, okay, so now that we've got our issues, let's go back to our roadmap and start adding them to our roadmap. And so this is the determination process. Okay, so if we click on add cards, this is going to pull in all of our linked repositories. So that means all 3 of those are in there. So what we're gonna do is, this is a lovely little bar, because what it can do is we can actually click on this and see at a glance how many people have upvoted this, what are extra comments on things, what are the labels. You can filter by different issues. I could look for, maybe I only want to look for ones that have revenue, for example. Like, we're really focused on making sure that we want this app to make money. So these are the ones that'll look at this and say, okay, well, no one's upvoted this, but it does have revenue on it. And this is where it becomes, if you're lucky, you're at a small startup, but you're using a lot of data. That's great. If you're less lucky, oftentimes, so I have on this slide, you have to use ideally data, vision, and honestly, like a little bit of your gut, because that's the key thing about getting all that feedback is you have to really know your product well. And if you don't know your product well, then you have to sort of get there. And whether that's, from people that are already on your team and they could tell you about the product, from external feedback, it's just really sort of knowing it. Okay, so then we're gonna add in so maybe for Q1, we're also gonna add in our alternative layouts here. So what happens is this basically gets built out. From there, we have this issue, and this is actually going to sort of spawn child issues. And this is where we start to get into the project management aspect of everything. Again, just looking at the time, but we'll go to the issue for details. And so you're gonna get to the point, let me make sure here. Yeah, so we're pulling it all together. Okay, so what would happen in the course of our app is that we're going to get features from a Google form or internal. So we're going to be basically putting together all that information and we're just plopping it all in GitHub. We just want to have as much stuff possible in GitHub. We're going to add labels to our issues, to these issues, so that we can prioritize things, so we can figure out, okay, like what do we actually want to be working on? Where is it important? We're going to prioritize, we're going to vote and comment on the issues. We're going to prioritize those issues and add them to the roadmap. And then from there, that's kind of where we start getting into the project management, meaning how do we actually execute and get all of this done? And that's where it's kind of neat to have everything in GitHub, because there's that paper trail where from here, you can go directly to, okay, this is an alternative layout. Depending on if there's a ton of comments or not, you can create a new issue, but reference this alternative layouts issue. So reference issue number 4. So maybe I want to create, you know, a new issue, and then we'll just do a blank issue. And so this is going to be the issue for the developer, for example. So this could be, you know, what was the layout? Right. Add masonry layout to, I don't know, app. Sure. Okay, and then internally in the comment, this is where you could have all of like your specs. If you wanted to, you could break it out into smaller issues so that it's a little bit more trackable and that kind of thing. But as long as you reference that number 4, I believe it was. 4, yeah, alternative layouts. Original issue. Okay. So let's submit this. So now if we go back to that original number 4, what you'll see is that GitHub actually links them together. So you can see here it says add masonry layout to app. So you have that sort of, again, that paper trail of how things have gone. And then what you can also do with GitHub, your commit messages, again, we're getting into a little bit of project management, is you can add, if you add a keyword in your commit messages before these issue numbers, so, you know, fixes number 4, closes number 7, what have you, it'll automatically close those issues as soon as it gets merged into whatever you've determined to be your default branch, which is very handy. Okay, that was a lot of information, but I think we did okay with the time. So let's, oh, this is the dark mode. So questions, that was a lot of information. There's also, so feel free to post questions. Oh, good, I'm glad you like it. It's handy because it's cheap, but it also allows you a lot of room to use your imagination. I've got, as well on my slides, I've got the some links to project management resources. Inspired is a really fantastic in-depth look on a really robust product management for apps and technical products. Some great blog posts, great sites, and then also GitHub resources as well. And then, yeah, so that's me there. If you want to follow me on Twitter, email me anytime at ann@shopcritique.com. Yeah, that's that.
Perfect. I've added the email in the chat so that you guys can just copy and paste it. Email Anne if you have any questions, or ask her how you can use GitHub for your product management. Besides that, I just want to say thank you so much for coming today and watching Anne's session. This was the last session of the day, so thank you for attending Startup Slam and for giving this really creative like insight into how you use GitHub for product management. If you guys have any last minute comments or questions, feel free to add them now. And do you have anything else to say before we all head out?
I mean, is there any good alternatives to GitHub for most of the things you mentioned? Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that the main point of product management is just being organized. And well, actually not totally true. It's that making sure everyone knows what's going on and having it be visible to everyone. So Trello is great for that. Product Board is really great for that. Anything where you can give people access to the decisions that are being made and why they're being made, and sort of seeing, oh, okay, like, you know, it's great for support to be able to know what's going to be coming out in Q3, for example. So there is, yeah, Product Board, Trello, Project. What was the one that, there was one, Let me go back here. I can definitely post my slides. I had that one slide that had all of the links and everything. Trello, yeah, thank you, Amy. But the reason I like GitHub is that the projects that like the project boards that they come out with, yeah, Monday.com. I've never actually used it, but I have also seen lots of ads. They do a lot of big ad spend. I think they're also fairly pricey though. Again, like to me, if you're already using, you know, GitLab or what have you, and if your developers are already familiar with it, why not? What's the harm, right? So I have not posted the slides just yet, but I totally will. Yeah. But I encourage everyone also just to read a lot, like read, even if you're not a product manager, because again, I was the technical director when I was getting into all of this sort of product management stuff. And even if it's not specifically your role, I would highly recommend just reading about product management. It is fascinating, and there's lots of great podcasts, and it's just to me, it's an industry that, you know, didn't really exist 10 years ago, like that job title, product manager, or at least in terms of our technical products. So it's really great to see that it's getting so much attention now. Oh, where am I going to post it? I'll put it up on my Twitter if you want to follow me on Twitter.
Twitter again?
Oh, it's Alfalfa Ann.
Perfect. And it's
so easy to spell. It's like the hay. Or
did I get
rascals. It? You totally got it.
All right, follow Alfalfa Ann for the link to those slides. I believe that all the recordings for all the sessions will be posted on our the Startup Slam LinkedIn group as well. So if you want to search that up on LinkedIn, that's where it'll be. Tom has another comment.
Yes, it totally can be difficult to get feedback. It sort of depends. If you have lots of users, generally they'll tell you if something is broken. But oftentimes it's harder to get feedback, especially on features and sort of what people are looking for. So things like having a form that, you know, people can just go in and post and make sure that it's actually somewhere that they can find, but also doing, you know, user interviews is really fantastic. Actually going out and talking to people. Something that Markup does, which I think is very clever, is they actually have a full Slack channel just devoted to Markup that they, you know, manage and that kind of thing. Basically anywhere that you can get feedback, good, bad, otherwise, you just want, especially when you're starting out, you just want to have as much information as possible. And then it's up to you to prioritize and determine what you're going to build.
Samantha has a comment as well. I've had a lot of experience with users struggling in silence because they're not empowered. Watching users use the product is definitely revealing. Tom also says thank you. And yeah.
I totally agree, Samantha. I totally agree. There's nothing more like illuminating than hopping on a screen share and just doing from a like UX kind of experience, like, or not UX, sorry, user testing. That is fantastic to see, like, okay, like, why would they go there, I wonder? Or, you know, why are they clicking on that? That's really fantastic. And then what you can do is then take that and then put it into GitHub. They don't know what they're doing. Oh, yeah, that's also a benefit of having a sort of a sibling Trello board, like a sibling public roadmap that they can go sort of check out and be like, oh, okay, like I can vote on this and that sort of thing. So it's nice to have your internal one and your external one.
Amazing tips. Thank you so much. It's 3:15, so that is a wrap. Samantha says, great session. I agree. Thank you so much, Anne, and thank you, everybody. I hope you've had a really great time and learned something here today at Startup Slam 2020. Thank you. And have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, all.
Thank you, Anne.